Listen up, my friends. This is an important one. First, I'm going to ask you a question, something to ponder, something to consider, which will help you master your fuel intake, your food intake. Here's the question. Does the food you eat impact your mood, how you feel? Does your mood, your emotional state, impact what you eat? Today I'm going to share some research with you just on that and some information, some pretty disappointing information that tells you why our food supply is the way it is, but we're going to figure out what to do about it. But as always, let's always get connected to what is true, what is right, and look at our vision, mission, and purpose. What is really needed in order to create life on our terms? Simple. The only thing you can control in life are your thoughts and beliefs, your emotions, and your actions. So self-mastery is the gateway to living greatly. So we're here to do this, to continuously be aware and control and eventually master those three things, your thoughts, emotions, and actions, because that's how we create life. So we want to decide what we want in advance, embody that person that has the ability to live that, the emotional state, and then create it. Take intelligent, effective action, not just being busy. So with that in mind, we're going to talk about something that was in the New York Times recently, and I'm going to talk about a few studies. Back to the question, does your food impact how you feel? We all know the way you feel determines really what we do in life. Some people are debilitated by how they feel. And so this is going to be really important for you to know. Now, in this is called the link between highly processed foods and brain health in the New York Times. And it says this, roughly 60% of the calories in the average American diet come from highly processed foods. Not just processed, highly processed, 60%. And this is similar through every developed nation. Research from the past 10 or so years has shown that the more ultra-processed foods a person eats, the higher the chances that they feel depressed and anxious. So if you eat a lot of processed foods, this is ultra-processed foods. They're devoid of nutrients. They have calories, but they don't have the vitamins, the minerals, the fiber, and all those things. The article went on and said a few studies have suggested that a link between ultra-processed foods and increased risk of cognitive decline. So your brain function, the very thing that brings in all the information, starts to degrade. 70% of the packaged foods sold in the United States are considered ultra-processed. Now, that word is ultra-processed, not just processed. This is a quote, ultra-processed foods are carefully formulated to be so palatable, so tasty and satisfying that they're almost addictive, says Dr. Eric Hecht, an epidemiologist at the Schmidt College of Medicine at Florida Atlantic University. Recent research has demonstrated a link between highly processed foods and low mood, low energy. In one 2022 study of over 10,000 adults in the U.S., the more ultra-processed foods participants ate, the more likely they were to report mild depression or feelings of anxiety. Those are code words for fear, fear-based emotional states, feeling that they're not enough. New research has also found a connection between high ultra-processed food consumption and cognitive decline. In a 2022 study that followed nearly 11,000 Brazilian adults over a decade, now I emphasize that because these are large-scale studies. This isn't done with a dozen people. It's 11,000. That one was 10,000. So this 2022 study, 11,000 Brazilian adults over a decade, 10 years, found a correlation between eating ultra-processed foods and worse cognitive function. Now, they define cognitive function as, listen closely, the ability to learn, the ability to remember, the ability to reason and solve problems. That is pretty much everything. Your ability to survive. And this is a quote. While we have a natural decline in these abilities with age, we saw that this decline accelerated by 28% in people who consume more than 20% of their calories from ultra-processed foods. So you age 28% faster in terms of your brain. And there's more. This came from Natalia Gomez Goncalves, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Sao Paulo Medical School and the lead author of this Brazilian study. It is also worth considering the possibility that the link between highly processed foods and mental health works in both directions. This brings us back to our initial two questions. And this is a quote from Frank Hu, a professor of nutrition and epidemiology at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. Diet does influence mood, but the reverse is also true. When you get stressed, anxious, or depressed, you tend to eat more unhealthy foods. In particular, ultra-processed foods that are high in unhealthy sugars and unhealthy fats. Now, not all sugars are unhealthy, and not all fats are unhealthy. Keep that in mind. And another study at Imperial School of Public Health found that higher consumption of ultra-processed foods was associated with a greater risk of developing cancer overall, and specifically ovarian and brain cancers. It was also associated with an increased risk of dying from cancer, most notably with ovarian and breast cancers. Now, consider this. Why would ultra-processed foods do that? Well, we need nutrients, and nutrients are protein, carbs, fats, fiber, water is a nutrient, but also micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and among that group of vitamins, there's polyphenols. There's all these compounds that are found in whole foods, whether it's a chicken leg that's been cooked with the bone in it that has more minerals in it because of that, or it's salmon, which has the pinkish color, which is an antioxidant, or it's broccoli, but it's not like a broccoli puff that little kids eat now. That's a processed food of like a broccoli puff is annihilated. They use coloring just to make it look green. It's no longer even green. The nutrients have been obliterated, eviscerated. There's very little nutritional value in a processed food. And here's a quick, how do you know if something's processed? There's two simple ways. One, pick it up and look at it and ask yourself, where did this come from? And if it takes you more than a few seconds, like 3 to 5 seconds, then it's probably processed. Now, along those lines, that doesn't mean it's always bad. There are functional foods that are very healthy for you that have been processed. And that's how you make supplements and so forth. And so humans tend to go black or white, good or evil. Like all supplements are evil or all supplements are good. That's not the way it is. We need to be able to think critically and laterally. We need to see the subtle nuances in different situations. So that 5-second rule I just mentioned of where did this come from, well, that's not always 100%. So let's look at a second one. It's this. If you have a food and you can put it on your kitchen counter and it doesn't rot within a few days, if it doesn't degrade, that's going to be pretty processed. And so we don't need to be perfect like this. It's not always possible. But there are some healthy foods like nuts and seeds that can be stored that way, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's not always an all or nothing thing, not always a good or evil thing. Now, keep that in mind. Now we're going to shift gears. But the questions were this: does your food affect how you feel? And how the way you feel affect your food choices? I think at this point, it's pretty clear, even without research studies. We just know that from living life. Now, why is it that our entire food supply is inundated with terrible food choices? Why is it so easy? I remember I was in the middle of nowhere in Guatemala, and I was in the jungle in the back, and there's like one store there, and they had eggs that were just sitting out. I always thought eggs had to be like refrigerated, but these were just from a chicken that was right outside. And it blew my mind. But in that same store, there were Doritos and candy bars, all these are food in the middle of nowhere. How does this happen? Well, I'm going to share something with you, which is one example of a lot of these. This is not just a singular incident. This has been going on for decades. Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, a huge company called AB InBev, and 27 other companies spend close to $40 million a year on lobbying the government in an effort to make their voices heard by lawmakers and regulators. They often fund political parties' campaigns. And documents released in December show an influential group that helps shape U.S. food policy and steers consumers toward nutritional products, has financial ties to the world's largest processed food companies, and has been controlled by former industry employees who have worked for companies that, like Monsanto, which don't have a lot of integrity. The documents reveal that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has a quid pro quo. That means they receive favors in exchange for something. And so they're receiving favors with a range of these giant food companies. They even own stock in companies, in ultra-processed food companies. So there's a benefit to them for making sure they get sold. And they have received millions in contributions from producers of pop, candy, and processed foods that are linked to diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and other health problems. So this Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is considered to be like the nonprofit that's here to fight for citizens and get healthy food to their kids in cafeterias and so forth. But why is it that there's fast food restaurants now in cafeterias? And why is it the food in cafeterias isn't even really food? The Academy accepted at least $15 million, this nonprofit, $15 million from corporate and organizational contributors from 2011 to 2017. And over $4.5 million in additional funding went to the Academy's foundation. I would like to know where that money went. Did that serve some greater cause? Unlikely. Among the highest contributions came from companies such as Nestle, which is a huge company if you don't know, PepsiCo, Hershey, Kellogg's, General Mills, Conagra, the National Dairy Council, and the baby formula producer Abbott Nutrition. Now, we'll stop it there, but I want you to consider this. This has been going on forever. It's coming more and more to light since the internet, but this has always been going on. One of the beautiful things about living in a free nation is capitalism, our ability to create life on our terms. However, we have free will, and we can decide what type of person are we going to be. And how do we know if something's right or wrong? In the simplest terms, does it harm anybody? The Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. That's the first and most important thing. And this is why I do all this research. I spend hours every day. I put my whole life in this. I get paid the big bucks by very wealthy people to vet things, to find out the truth about things, whether it's a business deal or if they just want to know if this advice that they're getting is accurate or if there are better options. And so it's very difficult to do this. Now, I had an idea because I want to make sure that I always give good advice, but I learn so much, but I don't always get it disseminated. And so I'm going to start sending out a weekly newsletter to you guys so that it's called the Daily Roar. But I'm not going to inundate you with an email every day. Once a week, I'll send you an update of the highlights of what I've learned, what the research, the principles, tools, and proof of what is real, but I'll also expose fraud. And I don't have, there's people that really don't like me because I will always tell the truth. Something that you should never lie about and even exaggerate about is health. Because what most people do is they create fear in others. And fear, as you know, if you've listened to the audios, actually degrades the body. It accelerates aging. When you're in a state of fear for too long, you're in what we call chronic stress. Your body breaks down faster than it's rebuilt. That's what aging is. And so I want to empower you. And my goal is always to teach you and educate you and empower you to become your own best personal trainer so that you can take command of your health. And you're not at the mercy of the mood of a physician or anybody. And so if you're interested in that, just say yes to this. And I got one thing for you to consider. One thing, because we're going to do a course. So I used to train health professionals and trainers. How about nutrition? Like how to take nutrition and not really, you don't have to know the smallest details of biochemistry, but you want to know how the body works, know the principles. And when you do, you will never be bamboozled again. When someone says this is the best diet, you'll be able to run it through these lens of principles and say, you know what, that part is true. This, I don't think so there, buddy. And so that's the key. The really most misinformation, most lies are exaggerations or a twisting of something that is actually true. And that's what makes it believable. And that's why really smart, intelligent people, fall for these things all the time. And that's why I get paid for these things, because I don't if my best friend lied about something, I would expose. You probably heard me say things about people that I know and I love, and a football player I'm really good friends with, and he invested in a supplement company. And I just told him, this is garbage, man, and I showed him the all evidence. I wasn't I was looking at it just from a perspective as if he didn't own it or anyone, because I'm not going to refer something to anyone, even my worst enemy, that would harm them. That is not what life is about, because that one law, do no harm, and then help as much as you can. That's it. Love is always the answer, my friend, toward yourself and all others. We were born lions, not fearful lambs. And it starts with truth. Love, truth, freedom, strength, courage, honor or integrity, and then self-mastery. I really think those are the 7 core values that every super achiever, every leader needs. And then you can add your personal ones, ones that shape your outlook and your personality and how you show up. But those 7 core ones make a big difference. I put a lot of thought in that for many, many years. And I would ask you to look at those and run them through your beliefs and say, would this serve me? Is this something that's worth adopting or focus on or prioritizing? All right, my friend, I leave you with this. If you found this useful, feel free to share this with others. We're going to start posting these on YouTube to get them out to more people. And I really want you to know, if there's something that you're challenged with, if there's something that you're not sure about and you have a question about it, I'll address it in these audios. Just let me know and we'll get it. I want to make sure you have everything you need to live life as you desire. Let's do it.
Tap into the real you, but you have to retrain yourself. The way you retrain yourself is you wake your ass up in the morning and you say, I am here for a reason and a purpose. And it's bigger than my moods. It's bigger than the difficulties of the day. I am here to live like a lion, not the fear of a lamb.